You ever look at some people and just think, wow, they must have been born with more discipline than me? Well, today we're going to dig into Hello Habits by Fumio Sasaki. And this book basically says that self-control, it's got nothing to do with being gifted. Nope, it's all about understanding this weird little quirk in your brain's operating system. I mean, think about it. Every single year, it's the same old story, right? We set these big, ambitious goals, and we're so determined that this year is going to be the one. But the data says something else. Studies show that a whopping 92% of those New Year's resolutions just get abandoned. Now, if it's happening to pretty much everyone, can you really call that a personal failure? I don't think so. You know, our go-to explanation is always the same. Oh, I just have weak willpower. We talk about it like it's a muscle. Either you're strong or you're weak. But what if I told you that entire idea is basically a myth? The real reason we all struggle is actually way more interesting, and it's all about how we're wired deep, deep inside our brains. So yeah, the problem isn't some flaw in your character, not at all. It's actually a feature of your brain's operating system. And behavioral economists, they have a great name for it. They call it our marshmallow problem. And trust me, it explains exactly why you'll choose that delicious cookie right now over having a six-pack, eventually. Okay, so the fancy term for this is hyperbolic discounting. It sounds super complex, I know, but the idea is actually incredibly simple. It just means our brain is hardwired to value a small reward that we can get right now way more than a bigger, better reward we have to wait for. It's like we have this built-in impatience and it's constantly sabotaging our best long-term plans. Okay, let me show you how this works. Let's say I offer you a choice. You can have one apple in exactly 1 year, or you can have 2 apples in a year and 1 day. What do? Well, obviously, you'd wait the extra day to get double the reward, right? That's your rational brain, your cool system, making the call. It's a total no-brainer. Okay, but now watch this. Let's bring that reward right here into the present. 1 apple for you right now, or 2 apples if you wait until tomorrow. All of a sudden, waiting 24 hours feels like an eternity. Your emotional brain, that hot system, it just completely hijacks the decision, and you grab the 1 apple. We just want that immediate gratification, even when we know it's the worst deal. That is hyperbolic discounting in action. Now, before you start getting frustrated with your brain, you gotta understand this isn't a bug, it's an ancient feature. I mean, think about it from our hunter-gatherer ancestors' perspective. A guaranteed bird in the hand today was infinitely better than 2 potential birds in the bush tomorrow, right? Our brains are basically still running that old survival software, but now they're doing it in a world filled with donuts and Netflix. And this whole idea brings us to one of the most famous experiments in psychology, Walter Mischel's marshmallow test. I'm sure you've heard of it. They'd sit a little kid in a room and offer them 1 marshmallow now or 2 if they could just wait 15 minutes. The results were, well, they were absolutely mind-blowing. The amount of time a 4-year-old could wait actually predicted how successful they'd be decades later, right down to their SAT scores. And get this is what really illustrates the impact. The kids who could hold out for the full 15 minutes, on average, they scored 210 points higher on their SATs than the kids who caved in less than 30 seconds. I mean, that is the raw power of delaying gratification. But it leaves us with a huge question, right? If our brains are literally hardwired to fail at this, how does anyone ever succeed? Well, it turns out our brain has this amazing built-in energy-saving solution, and it's something we can actually hijack for our own good. It is the secret to getting around our own faulty wiring, and it's called a habit. And this is wild. A study from Duke University found that nearly half of everything you do every single day isn't a conscious choice. 45% of our actions are just habits. They're just running on autopilot. From how you tie your shoes to that morning coffee routine you don't even think about. So this is the really crucial part. A habit is just an action that completely bypasses your conscious decision-making. It's like an unconscious script that your brain runs to save that precious mental energy. And think about what that means. When you do something without thinking, you don't have to fight temptation. You don't have to use any of that willpower we think is so important. And it turns out that every single one of our habits, the good ones and the bad ones, they all followed the same simple 3-step loop. This was made famous by the author Charles Duhigg. First, you have a trigger that kicks things off, then you have the routine, which is the behavior itself, and finally you get the reward, which tells your brain, hey, this loop is worth remembering for next time. There's a perfect MIT experiment that shows exactly how this works. Scientists were watching a rat's brain while it was learning to navigate a maze to find some chocolate. The first few times, the rat's brain was lit up, firing like crazy. But as the path got more and more familiar, the mental activity just plummeted. The trigger, a little click sound, led to the routine of running the maze, which led to the reward of chocolate. All of it with barely a thought. The rat's brain had completely automated the process. Okay, so if our brain is just going to automate everything into these little loops, how can we actually use that to our advantage, right? This is the point where we stop being victims of our own wiring and we start becoming the architects of it. So think about the two approaches. The old way, the willpower myth, says you have to stare temptation right in the face and fight it tooth and nail every single time. And honestly, that's just exhausting. The habit reality is so much smarter. It's all about designing your environment and your routines so that you never even have to face the temptation in the first place. You just bypass the fight completely. Now, to start designing, you first have to figure out what your existing loops even are. Charles Duhigg points out there are 5 common triggers that usually kick off our routines. Is it a specific location, a certain time of day, your emotional state, the other people you're with, or an event that just happened? Pinpointing your trigger, that is the absolute first step to changing the routine that follows. And listen, here is the single most important rule for hacking your habits. Do not try to fight the trigger, and don't try to just ignore the craving for the reward. That's a losing battle. Instead, you keep the trigger and you keep the reward the same, but you consciously swap in a new, better routine right in the middle. That's the secret. You know, Fumio Sasaki has this fantastic analogy in his book. He says acquiring a new habit is just like learning to like beer. At first, that new routine, like say going for a quick run instead of grabbing a cookie, it might feel a little unpleasant, kind of like your first sip of beer, right? It's better. But if you stick with it, your brain starts to connect that new routine with the reward, and eventually, you actually learn to crave it. So what this all comes down to is a really powerful shift in perspective. The goal is not to try and become some kind of superhero with unlimited willpower. That's not it at all. The goal is to become a clever, intentional architect of your own life. There's this amazing metaphor from the neuroscientist David Eagleman that just nails it. He says your conscious mind is like the front page of a newspaper. It only reports the big headlines, right? But the entire rest of the operation, your subconscious, is just running on its own completely behind the scenes. And your habits? They're the roads, the power grid. They are the entire infrastructure of that hidden world. So the big takeaway here is this. Stop trying to be stronger and start trying to be smarter. Design your environment, design your schedule, design your routines to make the good habits the easy, default, automatic choice. Because that is where real, lasting change actually comes from. And all of that leaves us with one last really important question to think about. See, whether you realize it or not, your life is being run by these subconscious habits. Your autopilot is always on. The only question is, who's writing the code?